Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Narrative Threads. This is a podcast where we have a conversation and search a little deeper into some of our favorite characters and stories and see if there's something even more spectacular underneath it all. I'm Nicholas Entz.
And I'm Justin Vijay.
And this is it. This is our first episode.
We're finally doing it.
This is something we had talked about for a really long time and just decided to pull the trigger on it. And I'm pretty excited.
Oh, I'm very excited. A little nervous, but we'll get there.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a background in film and editing, and Justin, as I know it, is quite the writer and enjoys English. Is that the best way to say it? I don't know.
Yeah, like I enjoy English to an extent. I did take English in school, but I have more of a passion for like literature, such as like fantasy. I'm really into anime and manga, as well as fantasy and just in general. So yeah, and you and I just kind of connected over the idea of looking deeper into stories, how they work, how they're thrown together, how the characters change it, and just like little nuances that we noticed that we thought would be cool to kind of bring to light. So yeah, I think it's really cool that that there's often a story beneath the story, right? So just picking out certain aspects of a character or a story and then seeing really why the author or the producer, the director kind of decided to put that particular character or plot piece in that particular moment. So this is kind of the gist of what we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, do you want to introduce our topic for the day?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the first episode. Mm-hmm. It's honestly nerve-wracking.
A little bit,
like,
yeah.
Let's be real.
Heart's pumping.
We're sitting in a room, but it feels like we're talking to like a bajillion people.
It does.
It's scary.
It's scary, so hopefully we'll get better as we go.
It'll get better. It'll get better. But today we're going to be talking about Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Grindelwald, yes, not Gendelwald or whatever you were saying before.
I kept calling him Grindelwald.
Ah, yes.
So I was writing notes this morning, and I wrote Grindelwald and like bolded
big letters.
the L so that I would remember it.
Yeah.
I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up.
No, it's all good.
So we're just going to look at Grindelwald as a character, as well as Newt Scamander as a character, both by themselves and in contrast and comparison to each other, and just kind of look a little deeper into what we noticed when we saw the movie. Both of us have seen the movie.
Yep.
And so we're going to dive into that topic.
Yeah. Maybe just a little bit before we... so we basically decided on the topic just because of how current it was. It's kind of in the minds of people when you talk about current fantasy films and stuff like that. This movie is probably the only like big blockbuster one that's out right now that I can think of. I guess the past one was Venom maybe, but I think this one kind of struck a chord with Nick and I just because Nick's into fantasy and D&D and stuff like that, and I've read the Harry Potter books religiously when I was a kid, so I have a bit more of a backstory in that, and Nick will kind of go over the more of the movie aspects that my child eyes could not find. So
it's very much like you have the history and like the understanding from the books and that kind of that world, and I was like looking at like, oh, they used a medium shot here or whatever.
Exactly.
And so I think it's going to be a really cool contrast between us as well. So we're starting off with Fantastic Beasts, but we also want to let you guys know that that's not where we're stopping. We're hoping to do a whole variety of things, everything from anime to movies, TV shows, books, just story in general, how a story is formed. And we'll keep expanding that. So if you have any suggestions or things you would like covered, please definitely put them in the comments of whatever medium you're listening to this on. More on that later. And I think we should just hop right into it.
Right in.
Let's
go.
do it. So, first, we should talk about how there isn't much lore for the character of Newt Scamander.
No, like the first I was talking with this about before, but the first time I heard of Newt Scamander was probably when I was about 10, 11, 12 years old, right around the time the 5th Harry Potter book came out, I believe. There was this little offshoot novel J.K. Rowling had written called The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. which probably was the name of the movie. But yeah, so Newt Scamander is the faux author of this book. So that's basically the gist of the whole backstory in terms of the novels. He's mentioned a couple times in the books, like mostly just the name of his title, as it's like, imagine like it's a university curriculum textbook. It's kind of a similar idea of that. So other than that, also forewarning before we get in, there might be spoilers in
I was
this
just
as
about
well.
to mention that.
So
there's going to be spoilers for this movie. So if you haven't seen it, pause, go see the movie, and then continue.
and then come back 2.5 hours later.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
As well, these are just our observations and opinions.
Not necessarily fact.
Yeah, we're gonna do the best we can, but this is kind of what we took away from it. So, as far as I know, and I've told you this, but I need to tell our listeners that I have never read a single Harry Potter book before.
Blasphemy.
I have not read any of them, but that's why you're here. You are going to help me along on this journey, and I think also like this is very much within the canon and in the world of the Harry Potter series, correct?
Yeah, like in terms of the movies, I think they're trying to create a whole backstory for the movies that were just kind of briefly touched upon in the books, especially Newt Scamander in this instance, and even Grindelwald, who's covered a bit more. But yeah, I think the producers and the director were kind of looking to create like a miniature Harry Potter universe within the Harry Potter universe to kind of flesh out some of these characters and why they are the way they are 60, 70 years later in the actual Harry Potter franchise. So yeah.
Right, yeah, this is the Crimes of Grindelwald is the second of the Fantastic Beasts series, which are apparently they've announced 5.
Apparently, it's a quintology.
It is a five set of movies. So this is the second one. Did you want to just kind of touch on the mechanics of the world of Harry Potter, how it works?
Yeah.
And if there's any like major differences between the books of Harry Potter and how the movies portrayed that world, or how Fantastic Beasts has portrayed this world?
Yeah, for sure. So it's called the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in some places. So obviously there is going to be a bit of magic involved. It is that typical wand-waving spell casting. You're shouting like an enchantment. That kind of stuff is going on in the world. In the movies of Harry Potter, you hear of the Muggles, who are the non-mages, such as ourselves, who are also called non-mages in the movie, non-maguses or something like that.
I think no-mage.
No-mage, that's what it is. Right? Yeah, so there's definitely a combination of wizards and non-magical folk in this. And then at the point of the Harry Potter franchise, there's a bit more integration within the worlds. It seems like at this point in the Grindelwald series, it's more Muggles and wizards are against each other. They're battling. They're head to head a little bit. Whereas by the time of Harry Potter, very secret. Muggles have no idea wizards exist for the most part. Differences between the movie, and Nick and I touched upon this, and I think it's more just for a visual aspect. I believe the specific wand movements and a lot of the spells. At some point in the 5th or 6th book, they introduced the idea of spell casting without even like saying the spell out loud, which I think is a lot of to do with trying to speed up the whole process of the whole combat scenes a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's really lame, like visually.
Yeah.
If someone is like yelling out a paragraph of like Latin
of text,
and then a spell comes out and so
swish and flick.
Yeah. It's just poof, done, and so that's kind of the world that Fantastic Beasts adopts as well, even though it is a prequel.
It is a prequel, yeah, but I think after like the fine tuning, like I think the first couple of Harry Potter books had to introduce the idea of how these spells work, and then they can kind of streamline it down after people kind of have a sense of, okay, this is how Expelliarmus works, this is how Stupefy works. We don't need to show the wand and the whole spell every time now.
Right,
so.
It would get monotonous and repetitive.
Yeah. However, book lovers would probably like to see it, but whatever.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Did you miss that? Did you feel like?
I mean, and I've thought this many times when I'm reading a book and then go to like a movie afterwards. I kind of like to see some synchronity. It's not a word, but like parallels between them as much as they can. However, I often understand why you can't do it that way. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think filmmakers have been trying to figure out the way to
fine
get
line
to get a book across in the same fashion is
it's difficult.
It's difficult to do on screen. So yeah, so that's kind of like the background. We're set in 1940.
I thought it was 1927 because it was. I remember seeing it at the beginning of the film, but that might have been the first movie. But yeah, it's in between World War I and World War II.
Yes.
Because that, and again, spoilers for this whole movie franchise. There's a scene towards the end of the movie where there's like a hallucination vision of World War II coming. So
yeah,
we're in between the world wars here. So
yeah, so it's kind of
tumultuous times.
It's in between that time where people feel like that was it, they're done with it, and then all of a sudden there's this bombshell to the wizarding world, at least. Yeah. And all that saw Grindelwald at the end there with his vision. So let's talk about Newt specifically.
Mr. Newt. Yes.
Mr. Newt. Let's dive into him first. I was really impressed with the subtlety of the character.
Okay. So what do you mean by that?
Like we kind of talked about contrasting him to Harry.
Mm-hmm.
Harry is a very, like, I guess, prominent, very present, and he takes up space. You know, like he's a big character. He might be timid in the beginning, but still, like, you know. And whereas Newt is a lot more reserved. And
a lot more laid back. Yeah, Harry's more of that typical protagonist, whereas Newt's a bit more, almost not like a secondary protagonist, but he has characteristics that are kind of demonstrated by that kind of character. He's not
your typical front man.
No.
For a movie, which I thought was really interesting. And I think the choice, like, this was a very obvious choice because you told me there was very little lore on the character of Newt before this movie.
Before the movie, yeah.
He had this book in this world, but his personality was not set in narrative stone.
Yeah, like the only inkling you get to his personality is the very end of the Harry Potter franchise, where you've met Luna Lovegood before. She's kind of this eccentric, often lovable character, actually. The audience really took to her. And she marries his grandson. So there's not much to go by, but you can maybe sense that there's a bit of eccentricity within this group. There's not quite, like, even with Newt, he doesn't quite fit in with others. Neither did Luna. So maybe that's kind of some symbolism there in terms of how that works.
Right. Yeah. No, because they obviously made those movies and Luna's character before the Fantastic Beasts movie. So yeah, they might have kind of reversed the role.
Maybe.
Kind of.
Yeah. Because I think Rolf, that's the grandson's name, is Rolf. They have really good names back in then.
Oh, yeah.
But from what little is on him even is he's more of like a typical, like, okay, I'm weirded out by your kind of, that's kind of the only real personality traits of Newt that you get. So
yeah, so it's, it was really interesting. We kind of have like a few differences written down here. For first off, there's a difference in age. Harry Potter is a little boy.
Yeah, you grow up with him. He's 12 to start with, or 11.
Yeah. And then you kind of grow up with him through school. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you meet Newt in the first Fantastic Beasts movie, it's like he's an adult. He's out of school already. He is like, he's very competent with magic. He's not like learning new things about magic. Yeah. Where that seemed to be kind of like a staple of the Harry Potter movies, right? He was going to school for magic.
Yeah, School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Yeah, so that's kind of like a movie aspect of that, is like the audience has already grown up learning how to do magic, so that they kind of decided, okay, we don't need to visually show you how to do magic anymore. We can just kind of introduce this character that has the wherewithal to do magic properly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Like, it's not about figuring it all out again.
Yeah, because I think that would be redundant. Yeah,
it's about all the other things going on around them. So we have that. They're very different in different places in life, really. Mm-hmm. Their personalities are also very, very different. Newt is like a lot more emotionally kind of withdrawn and hesitant and shy, whereas Harry, he's like eager to make friends. You know, he meets like Hermione and Ron like right off the bat, and like, you know, he's more outgoing in that way. As well, Harry has a very strong sense of right and wrong. Like, it's a lot more linear, where he's like, this is good, Voldemort's bad. And I will fight against that. And Newt, especially in the first movie, is a lot more like, he kind of stays out of things, whereas
Very
Harry
neutral,
throws himself into situations. And I kind of wrote down that Newt is like a neutral good if we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
D&D man over here.
Alignment chart, and that's, I think that's really interesting, because we're taken along, and we're not necessarily told what's right and wrong through the story. It's very much like he's kind of trying to skirt around this subject of Grindelwald, but he gets thrown into the middle of it.
Yeah, because like, and we'll touch on this later when we get to the Grindelwald section, but Grindelwald's ideology is a lot more, the audience can relate to maybe a bit more than Voldemort's whole aspect of that, right? So it is more not cut and dry of like right and wrong here. It's maybe wizards should be on top at this point. Like, if you're in that position, maybe like it's not the whole racism as much with Voldemort, who doesn't like mudbloods or muggles just for the sake of them being that. It's more, we're special people, like wizards are special, so why are we feeling like we have to hide from people who aren't special? So like you touched on, Newt is a more neutral character. Harry is the typical protagonist. He's portrayed as such in the books as well. Audiences are probably attracted to characters like that. They like the big boisterous characters, but also characters that like Newt, who are attractive to some other kind of audiences as well. So
and the last point I have written down here is, he is not Harry, and I think it was a very decisive and clear call by the filmmakers. This was directed by David Yates. Who did do Harry Potter as well. He did from the Order of Phoenix onward.
Okay, so 5 to 7 or 7.2.
Yeah. He did all of those movies onward, and the first and second Fantastic Beasts. So I think things like that are like, he knows the world. He knows the characters, and it was a very conscious decision to make this a very different protagonist, and I think that's really interesting. Yeah,
I'm not sure like how much you remember the first 4 Harry Potter movies then, but did you, if you can remember, do you remember there kind of being a difference in how the whole, like, because I found in the first 2 movies especially, it's like a kid friendly movie.
It is, yeah.
But after he kind of takes over, well, and also in the 4th movie, because that's kind of when the series has the Innocence Lost kind of moment where Voldemort's back. And so I find that maybe it was like the producer's choice. In case we're going to go to a director who is more adult, like more grim kind of director.
Yeah, so. It like definitely, and we can maybe talk about this more on another episode, but like the difference from the first movie to the last movie is insane.
Yeah, it's like, not even this. Like, it doesn't look like the same franchise.
It's not even close. The first movie was in 2002. The final movie was in 2011.
So 9 years.
9 years, and the differences were immense. Like it's almost like kind of The Hobbit versus Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
where The Hobbit, that book was designed for kids.
It was for his son Chris, from what I remember.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
and that's kind of how the first 4 movies start, and then all of a sudden things start like getting intense, and they totally switch like feels of it.
Yeah,
and I think the Fantastic Beasts movies are yet another feel. I think they balance it a little better.
I think so too. I think honestly, I think a lot of book. This is kind of a little off topic, so we'll kind of end it on that. I think on this note for The Hobbit, but I think a lot of the book only readers for The Hobbit were kind of disappointed, because I think the way The Hobbit was done, especially in the last movie, The Battle of the Five Armies, they tried their very best to Lord of the Rings it. I found, which kind of took away from a bit of The Hobbit. It is more of a children's story, and I think, like, I didn't really mind it. I really liked The Lord of the Rings, but I think a lot of the book viewers did want that kind of childish story with Bilbo. It's just a treasure hunt, right?
Yeah. Whereas
this is like, oh, Sauron's here now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a very different style, and Fantastic Beasts I feel like kind of balances it a little bit more.
Yeah, I felt more like I liked the Fantastic Beasts besides the last Hobbit movie better than the Hobbit. The first two Hobbits, at least.
For sure. Okay, I think we'll take a break and then we'll dive into the character of Grindelwald and really open that up. It's going to be
star
really
of the movie.
So we'll see you right after this break. Welcome to the break, the mid-roll, the bump, whatever you want to call it.
The baby bump.
Thank you guys so much. If you're listening to this, thank you. We really, really appreciate it. This is something we just kind of wanted to do. It's been kind of like something we've been thinking about for a while, and we just decided to pull the trigger. So if you're listening to this, thank you so much. It's really awesome that we have people around that want to hear our voices.
Exactly. And more than hear our voices, hear our opinions.
Ooh, even worse. So you can find us at YouTube, at Narrative Threads, as well on SoundCloud. We're hoping to eventually move things onward to iTunes and other podcasting apps at some point, but we'll see how that goes eventually. Yeah. Most importantly, we just wanted to thank you, and we wanted to say, if you like the show, please comment, please leave a like and subscribe, and tell someone about it. If you know someone who would be interested in just talking about story and narrative, who would find this interesting, please just tell them. That's the best press.
It's all we need to keep us going.
It's all we need.
Just a little bit of validation.
We really, that's what we seek the approval of others.
Yes.
And spreading the word is the best thing.
No, but I think the great opportunity for this is that even if it is something we continue, just get an opportunity to discuss some things that we're really interested in, that maybe we can reach out to other people who are also interested as well, and they can share their opinions. So I think that's a big opportunity for both us as the doers and you guys as the listeners, is that we can have this conversation together. So yeah. So thank you guys once again for listening.
And I think we'll head back to the show.
Head back to the Wizarding World. Wizarding World.
Welcome back to part 2
of the second movie.
Yes.
Part 2 of the Grindelwald trilogy. Not just kidding. It's this Newt Scamander series, I swear. No, but as you can tell, maybe I feel more attached to Grindelwald just because I read about him in the books, right? So he's this arch villain who was the big bad before Voldemort came along. So I think it was really interesting to see a movie portrayal by him, despite maybe some of the controversy of his casting at the time.
Was there controversy for what's his face?
Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh, people are very upset with the whole situation with his with Amber Heard, his ex-wife. So people didn't want him doing it.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
I think we'll leave our opinions on that whole thing outside. We'll just talk about the character and the portrayal that Johnny did.
Yeah.
But
which was excellent.
I thought he did a great job.
He held that movie together, I think.
Oh yeah, he was the glue, I think, for some of the scenes that sometimes, because I think maybe one weakness that you can have with such a reserved character like Newt is that it can maybe feel a bit slower of a movie, just because with a character like Harry, he's driving the plot, whereas Newt's letting the plot come to him, and in a lot of cases, Grindelwald is that plot steamrolling towards him.
He has to be a strong opposition in order for Newt to do something. Yeah, and so I thought he played it fantastically. Mm-hmm. From what I can tell, you really loved this character and really appreciated it. I'm someone who's like I'm a very optimistic person, and I pretty much always root for the good guy. And you are not.
No, ever since I was a little kid, I've always cheered for the bad guys. It started with Zurg back in Toy Story.
Oh really?
Yeah. But no, especially with a character like Grindelwald, he isn't. I'm not a huge fan of overbearing bad guys. They're just for Voldemort, typical bad guy. He's
right.
Power hungry. He's a fear mongerer.
He's strong.
He's very strong. He is stronger than Grindelwald magically. It is said that many times in the book, which I also think makes Grindelwald a more compelling character because he's not necessarily winning just through power alone. He's winning through mind manipulation. He's being very charismatic. It's the way he holds himself, like Voldemort's in this like black slithery robe thing, and Grindelwald's like immaculately dressed, which is cool.
We'll get into that more for sure. But you wanted to talk about kind of his backstory, his character arc with Dumbledore, and his interactions as a youth.
Yeah. So Grindelwald, I think, is introduced, if memory serves, in the 5th or 6th book. It has been a while, but he's portrayed as this kind of character who's in some ways parallel to Dumbledore, sometimes the antithesis to what we think of Dumbledore later. So he starts off as this magical prodigy. If you're only a movie watcher, if in the 4th movie there's a character called Victor Crumb who's from Durmstrang Institute.
Yep, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so that's where Grindelwald went to his school. He did not go to Hogwarts. And Durmstrang is a school where it's more acceptable to try out your dark magic and stuff. But Grindelwald was so excessive in his experimentation and his love for the dark arts, which is like evil magic. Okay,
right.
That's like the killing
bad
curse.
Magic.
Bad magic.
Dark magic. Bad
juju. But so he got kicked out, and this was when he was about 16 years old. So he went to a place called Godric's Hollow, which at the time Dumbledore had just graduated from Hogwarts. So there's a 2-year age gap there. At this point, Dumbledore is feeling very resentful towards his family. He's got a sister who's mentally damaged from a situation that happened earlier in her past with Muggles. So at this point, Dumbledore is feeling very vulnerable in terms of, later on in the books, I should say, Dumbledore is very pro-Muggle, okay? He's very in for like Muggle rights.
Yeah, for sure.
At this point, Dumbledore isn't that character.
Okay.
He is pro-Muggle. Like, he's not a bad guy or anything, but he's at this point where he's susceptible to someone like Grindelwald, who's going to say, why aren't wizards on top when Muggles, kind of in a sense, did this to your sister?
Right. He didn't have the same convictions he has as we see him later on in the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah. So this is probably something that happens that we'll probably see in film. It's not really even shown too much in the books. Hopefully we'll kind of see this convictions laid out bare for us kind of see later.
Yeah, there's 3 more movies.
Yeah, because there is, spoilers again, there is going to be a really big battle between the 2 of them.
Ooh.
Not Newt. If it is Newt, then there's going to be a big problem. Because so in the books, it's stated that there's a very big battle between Dumbledore and Grindelwald.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like the best duel of all time.
Ooh.
So yeah, that to look forward to.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, Dumbledore's in a very susceptible spot. And this is kind of the whole premise of the movie, where people are asking, why isn't Dumbledore stopping Grindelwald? Is this whole I can't scenario, which they kind of maybe changed a bit for the movie.
Yeah,
in the
movie there was a blood pact between them, and that from what I got, it magically made them not allowed to fight. That's what I understood.
It's kind of the gist of it. However, that might have been like maybe a bit of an artistic liberty with the script.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because from my understanding is that, and it's said in the books, that Dumbledore, there's this big battle towards the end of their relationship, which lasted, I think, it was a summer, right? Where they got really close. The whole Dumbledore was kind of in love with Grindelwald. Am I saying Dumbledore or Voldemort? I think I said...
No, you said Dumbledore.
You're okay.
You're good.
So Dumbledore is kind of romantically inclined towards Grindelwald. It's never stated if Grindelwald reciprocated, but it is mentioned that he manipulated Dumbledore, like he knew about it. So there's this big climactic duel because they spend so much time together over this summer that Dumbledore's brother is very upset that he's not taking care of the sister. And there's this huge battle, and which ends up with Dumbledore's sister dying from it.
Right.
And the whole reasoning for Dumbledore not being able to fight Grindelwald is because he's afraid that Grindelwald knows who did the curse, who killed his sister, which it may have been Dumbledore, right? Because there's spells flying everywhere. So that's, which I think is really, to me, it's a bit more compelling than this whole blood pact thing.
Okay, yeah.
Which they might still do. That might be part of the reason why they do it in the film as well. But I think it's more in line with Dumbledore's character. He was such a smart person, like even when he was young,
yeah,
that a blood pact doesn't seem like something he would do.
Oh, okay.
to me as book Dumbledore, but movie Dumbledore might be different.
Right.
So
Book Dumbledore and movie Dumbledore.
different characters a little
Two
bit.
Dumbledores.
Yeah.
Double doors.
Double doors.
Double doors.
Yeah.
So great. Like that's kind of the background where we see Grindelwald introduced, tied in with Dumbledore's storyline. From what I have seen in the movies, I would say a very defining feature of Grindelwald is that his ambitions and goals are like central to his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the whole for the greater good is that represents him very well.
Right, which was the slogan for kind of his campaign, I guess you would say.
His campaign, which actually Dumbledore and him started. That was their motto back when they
Oh,
were
really?
kids.
Both of them started?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Which is a cool thing, I think.
I wonder if we'll get to see more of like kind of the background
I really hope so.
as the movies go on.
I think a lot of like the book movie watchers are more intrigued with that because there's
Right.
no real source material for Newt, right? So I think like that's like where you see people like me who are interested in this Dumbledore Grindelwald storyline because it's mentioned in the books and now we get to finally see it.
Yeah, and this movie I felt was like introducing Grindelwald as a character. He was kind of briefly like at the end of the first one, but this
Yeah.
one was like really diving into, hey, this is this character, this is what he's about.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where the central plot builds around. Also, the Elder Wand. He has the Elder Wand. Did you have kind of like how did that happen?
Okay, so this is when Dumbledore and Grindelwald are together. There's these 3 very potent magical items that they're trying to collect so they can do this whole campaign of Wizards on Top, and it's the Elder Wand, the Invisibility Cloak, which Harry Potter has, and then there's also the Resurrection Stone. So they need these 3 items to kind of... It's said that when you have all 3 items at once, you can conquer death. So I'm not necessarily if that's true or not. With people, there's some theories that say you can, but the whole premise of these items and the reason we've seen the Elder Wand before is that Voldemort's obsessed with conquering death in his campaign. He doesn't.
Right.
He's afraid of dying, so he wants to have these items, at least the Elder Wand, because it's the most powerful wand in existence. And as you can see, Grindelwald's a very powerful wizard in his own right. He's said to be the second best at his time besides Dumbledore. But with the Elder Wand, maybe there's a bit of a closer matchup there. So, yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. So that's kind of how
Yeah.
he's in possession of it, and it kind of...
Yeah, we see it in flashbacks in the Harry Potter movies of how he actually got the wand. He stole it from a wand maker who said he was going to try to replicate it.
Oh, okay.
So you see flashbacks in the 6th movie, I believe. So
Okay.
Yeah, so that's when he's very young. At this point, he looks like he's in his 40s, I'd say. So he's had it for a while at this point.
Oh, okay. So he's pretty familiar with it.
Yeah.
So his whole campaign, this idea of basically it's wizards are strong, like whether it's evolution or whatever, they have magic, and us regular people, us muggles, do not. And so his idea is we are stronger, we are, I guess, better than regular people, and so why are we hiding from them? Why are we letting them dictate our fear, our kind of like how we live in secret?
Yep. Yeah. It's very, I mean, it's a convincing argument, right? Because let's put this into a real world scenario. Let's say there is this super race of people. It doesn't have to be magic necessarily, but something. Do you think those people are really going to want to be suppressed by people who are normal?
Right.
I said that in quotations as well.
Yeah, air quotations.
air
You can't see on a
quotations.
podcast.
It's a tough argument to make it rationally, right? So there is maybe a bit of credence to his whole argument.
Credence.
Yeah, I realized that after.
Yeah.
But no, I think Grindelwald he's not a good character either.
No.
So, I mean, these aren't really arguments you should consider.
Right, exactly. We are not saying that one people or one person or anything like that is better than anyone else.
No, but in Grindelwald's mind and maybe in some people's mind, it can be maybe a bit more of a, oh yeah, okay, maybe there is a bit of something to that.
Right, and it's this idea of strength rules.
Yeah, which is similar to Voldemort's idea, but I think Grindelwald is more of a group group strengths as opposed to individual strengths.
Right.
Voldemort isn't interested in sharing power at all.
Right, exactly. He just wants to be on top.
Yeah, whereas at least this portrayal of Grindelwald in the movie seems more invested in his companions. At least he pretends like he does. He probably doesn't in his mind, but at least he like looks like he does.
Yeah, he's striving for what did you call it? Meritocracy?
Yeah, like the strength dictates how the world would work.
I have a definition.
Okay,
like
go
an
for it.
actual
An actual one.
An actual definition. Government or the holding of power by people selected on the basis of their ability.
Yeah, so like merit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so so I think he does desire meritocracy in some sense. Yeah.
And you compared him to Voldemort. How Voldemort just wants to be on top. I have Grindelwald written down as a lawful evil character.
Yeah.
And Voldemort is more of a chaotic evil character.
Voldemort is definitely chaotic evil. He has no qualms at all with killing any of his followers.
Right.
At all.
And their styles of bringing about their vision, I guess you could say, are very different. It's this idea of manipulation that Grindelwald uses, and this idea of just raw power, raw strength that Voldemort has.
Yeah, so like a lot of people will say Grindelwald is a serpent tongue, silver tongues kind of character who is very charismatic and very able to control people through just how he's talking and arguments he's representing, which is kind of funny. I just thought of this now because Voldemort's whole ideology, he's represented by a snake, but he doesn't have any of these characteristics.
Oh, yeah, that's
right. I just thought of that. So
it's interesting.
Because he's like pro Salazar Slytherin, right? So I think it's kind of interesting how they have a character who is more representative of like a devilish snake kind of character. And then we just had one who was so obsessed with the idea of a snake that he wasn't one in a way.
Yeah. And let's briefly touch on Grindelwald being very similar and in a very similar time period to a certain character in history.
Man.
An actual man.
Yes. I call Grindelwald Magic Hitler.
Yeah.
Even in the artistic choices in the movie, he's the atypical Aryan. Blue eyes, blonde hair. He's even got like
We're going to talk about the eyes specifically later.
I don't understand the whole eye thing, so Nik will touch on that.
I did a deep dive on that, so we'll get into that.
But he even has like a silly kind of mustache too.
Yeah,
he doesn't have like the toothbrush, but it's like a little pencil thing.
And it's around the time just before World War II, so it's very possible that there's going to be some tie-in.
Yeah, like it coincides with Hitler's rise to power, right? So if this is where I think it is, in 1927, early 1930s. This is, from what I remember in history, where Hitler is starting his rise to power.
Right, and there's a lot of similarities between the two. Yeah. Hitler was known as a very charismatic leader, one who gave very rousing speeches and brought people to him through that, and then used all of those people as his power to take over.
And I think
attempted to.
Yeah, I think you will see that later in the movies where Hitler, Grindelwald do have very charismatic approaches to how they build their power base. But when the chips are kind of laid down and they're starting to scramble a little bit later, they kind of revert to like a more idiotic evil in a way.
Right.
Like more along the lines of Voldemort, like just throw power at them just because I'm not thinking properly right now.
Right, exactly. So let's move on to kind of comparing and contrasting Newt and Grindelwald, because they are the two main characters, right?
These are the characters you're going to the movie for.
Yeah, definitely. And it was interesting to see how Grindelwald like almost took over like the movies, like, and I feel he's going to be very, very strong in the next ones. However, Newt does have his own interesting character, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen, because we see him changing a little bit. Like we talked about motivation. Grindelwald is a very internally motivated person.
Yes,
he's got an idea. He's going to do it. Newt is externally motivated, especially in the first movie. He doesn't do anything until situations happen and he reacts to them.
Yeah, he's forced to be a part of the plot in a lot of these.
Yeah, which cases is interesting for like a main character. It's kind of weird. The way they approach conflict is also very, very different. But also similar, like Newt is very charismatic, not towards people, but towards these fantastic beasts, and has like a very nurturing, I guess, style to his character, and can't get along with people.
Yeah.
And then Grindelwald is like very charismatic. He wants to help, air quotations again, people, and he sees things one way.
They're both very kind and nurturing to their own selected groups.
Yeah.
Grindelwald does. It's almost like the wizards in Newt's case are the muggles in Grindelwald's case.
Right.
He only wants to talk to wizards, whereas Newt only wants to talk to animals. And although
the wizards become the animals. Ooh.
Tune in next time.
So I wanted to break down a little bit more film talk.
Yes,
stuff.
This is where you'll shine.
This is I was very interested in this. So body language, how the character is portrayed through the shots, the camera, the editing, all that kind of stuff really interests me. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about that a little bit. So a very standard way you do two people talking is you have a two shot where they're both standing or sitting there in the frame. You can see them. And then you do an over the shoulder of both. And so you have an angle of both of their faces. And then you also have them in one shot together. So that's kind of a standard, like very vanilla. That's how you set up two people talking to each other.
How you movie.
Yes, exactly. This is a podcast where we teach you how to make a movie.
How to movie.
How to movie and read book.
Yes. How to read.
So what they did specifically, and I remember it in a very specific case where Newt is talking to his brother near the beginning.
Yeah.
He's in Ministry of Magic.
Yeah, this is. I can't remember if it's I think it's the British Ministry of Magic at this point.
I think so. Yeah. And so they're talking in like a hallway, and it's set up very similarly, except for one thing. When you do the over shoulder shot of Newt's face, so you should see a little bit of his brother's shoulder and head, and then Newt. That's kind of normally what it would be. Instead, what they do is they have Newt filling the entire frame.
Okay.
He is isolated. He is trapped inside of this frame. You can tell he's not a very socially apt person, I would say. He's a little nervous, and his eyes dart away. He's often looking down. Yeah. And it's this idea kind of creates a sensation of being trapped in this conversation. He's uncomfortable. Yeah. There's so much focus on him, and he cannot escape. Whereas Grindelwald tends to actually take over other people's frame. The woman, the kind of flighty...
Oh, Queenie.
Yes. Queenie. When she meets him in his house, he like walks into the room, and he's distant for a while. But as the conversation continues, he moves closer and closer and closer, and she kind of backs up. And he even, like the two shot where they're both in it, he like pushes her towards the edge of it and kind of takes over her space almost. Yeah,
which is cool because it even like shows how his character works, right?
Exactly.
It has his ideology is pushing and pushing and pushing until you don't have an opinion anymore. You're doing what he wants.
Yeah, and he kind of pushes you into that place, and it almost makes them feel trapped in that way. But just this subtle way of showing power and charisma, I thought was really, really interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
As well as costume choices.
Yeah.
So every movie kind of has like a color palette.
Yes.
And Newt's costume is like almost identical to the background colors and other colors you see within the frame. He almost literally blends in.
Wallflower.
Yes, very much a wallflower. And then Grindelwald is like black and shock white hair, right? He stands out. He is sharp and just like exudes this like sense of like it's a powerful presence.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's very different from
very contrasting to what's going on around
him.
You
see like nice warm oranges and some blues and stuff. And then he's like just black and white.
Yeah. Like even, and this could be wrong, but this from what I remember from the movie, like even like his like followers didn't have that color palette from what I remember. Maybe they had a bit more blacks as well, but he definitely has a very striking, like, if he's in the shot, you see him, like, he's not hiding anywhere.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I thought that was very, very interesting that they made the main character very blended in, and I think that fits with his personality perfectly. I think that was a brilliant choice, but not what you would think for a main protagonist. Again, like I think when we were going over stuff, I said he is not Tom Cruise.
No, he's not.
Tom Cruise in every single one of his movies is like this charismatic and very like outgoing, very confident, cocky, maybe like very strong presence,
macho kind of.
Yeah. It's that kind of style, and Newt is the exact opposite of that,
which I think is maybe representative of just like what we talked about earlier, the whole changing of the guard. Like we don't want to watch another Harry Potter movie where the protagonist is leading the charge. We want to maybe change it up a bit, and maybe that's what the directors went for. Yeah,
for sure, and I think that's really, really cool. Last thing I want to talk about is Grindelwald's eyes.
Yes, because I actually have no idea what this is about.
So he has two different colored eyes, which
I also do too.
Which you do as well. Yes. It's called heterochromia.
Yes.
Complete heterochromia is when the irises are completely different colors. Some people have partial, where just part of their eye is a little bit different. But both you and Grindelwald.
Mine's not as drastic.
No, not quite as drastic, but you both have heterochromia. And I thought that was very, very interesting because obviously it's a contact, or they did it in post or something like that. It's a very obvious choice.
Yeah.
And I thought, why did they do that? Mm-hmm. So I read into things a little bit, and there hasn't been any, I guess, canon description of it. But some people have theories. Okay. And I'm going to run a few by.
Okay.
I'm going to run a few by you.
Yes.
Number one, his dabbling in the dark arts.
Yes.
So from what we've seen of Voldemort, Mr. Lizard Man.
Mr. Snake.
Right? He is deep in the dark arts. And a lot of people say that through that use and experimentation of magic, it alters his appearance.
Well, you recall like the whole Horcrux kind of thing with Voldemort? His disfiguration is a result of him splitting his soul.
Oh, okay.
So it is dark magic. It is correct. It's very specific. So like when each piece of like his soul gets cut off, he's dehumanizing himself, right?
Right.
So which, this could very well be for. I don't believe Grindelwald has done with the Horcrux thing, but it could be something else that he's doing.
And you said near the beginning that he was like into the dark arts and stuff like that. So it might be a consequence of that.
Yes.
That was a very interesting idea.
Yes.
The second thing is that final scene where he like breathes in the smoke from the skull or whatever, and then has that vision.
He's like a hookah kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's actually called his Grindelwald's hookah on the wiki. Yeah,
that's hilarious. Yeah. So that would be an instance of divination magic.
Okay.
And some people say that that eye could be magically imbued.
Okay.
To have divination-esque properties.
Right.
In a similar way that Mad Eye Moody had like
a glass eye thing.
Yeah, which was magically imbued to help him see and whatever else.
However, the Moody, most of us know, wasn't actually him.
Sorry?
Moody, like in the movie?
Oh, yeah.
He's actually a Death Eater.
That's right.
Death Eater's impersonating him. But yes, the real Mad Eye did have the eye as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
So that's another idea. And the third and final one is that he's blind in one eye.
See, that's what I was thinking too.
That's an interesting choice because of there's a lot of beliefs and philosophy that this idea of having blindness, even in one eye, gives you an almost like third inner eye.
Is this like a whole Odin reference?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
But it could be derived from that. I think I saw something where in Homer's Odyssey, it was maybe kind of first used in a literary sense there.
Yeah.
But I think there was something about someone blinding themselves to have more insight.
Yeah, it's almost like a daredevil kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of the Odin thing, like from what I remember, and this is a while, but like Odin gave up his right eye to achieve wisdom or something like that. So maybe it's something along. That's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah. So this idea throughout history, this narrative thread, if you will, of eyes, blinded eyes, giving the person, the individual, a greater sense of something. And a greater like intuition or like literal sense.
Yeah, like a higher tier, like ascension in a way.
Yeah, and so some like I thought maybe that's why Grindelwald is so charismatic. He can almost see through people in a way, or has a very good sense of them because of this blindness. And kind of knows where to poke and where to prod and to get them to kind of join his side.
There is one thing as well, and I'm not sure if this might be a little stretching for you.
Yeah.
In the Harry Potter world, universe, there's two types of magic that are special. There's an occlumens and a legilimens. So a legilimens is like a mind reading, okay?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Voldemort was extremely proficient in this type of magic, whereas Grindelwald is very proficient in the other one, where it's just protecting your mind.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay,
so that's
interesting.
kind of maybe it's a result of his like high tier occlumency is the result of his eye. Maybe.
Yeah.
So
so it was kind of interesting just like seeing all those different theories and ideas. And, and I think each of them has a very
they all could be valid.
Interesting take on his character, but it just kind of shows that like he's got so much depth as a character. And Voldemort was so one-dimensional and linear.
Yeah.
Like it's not that he was a bad villain.
No.
He was just a typical villain.
He does the purpose, right? You're always scared. Like we talked about this, like with Voldemort on the screen, you don't know if he's going to lash out and kill someone, which is a different effect than what Grindelwald's doing, but it's still it's effective in its own way.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas with Grindelwald, people are more apt to be like, oh, okay, maybe he's like, they don't want him to die. He has that almost low-key like effect. Like he's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how else to describe it.
He's interesting.
Yeah.
And you want to like learn more about him and figure out kind of what makes him tick.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to mention or cover before we close this out?
The only thing I want to mention, just because of the eye thing, is that you do see Grindelwald when he's younger, when he's about 18, 20, and it hasn't happened yet.
Right.
So at some point in the 25-ish years that have happened since then, something happened. So maybe we'll kind of see maybe the result of how that happened, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think they owe it to us to explain it.
Definitely, because it's obvious.
Yeah, it's very obvious. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, well, I think that does it for this episode 1.
Episode 1.
Of hopefully many.
Many.
We will see. But thank you guys so much for listening, joining us as we just look deeper into the new Fantastic Beasts movie, The Crimes of Grindelwald.
So tune in next time and we'll probably discuss something that's maybe a bit different than a movie that's very current. We might be discussing something from the past or from the future. We'll see. So
yeah, we want to kind of do a wide variety at the beginning and see what we like to talk about and what you guys want to hear. And so if you have any comments, suggestions, anything at all, please just leave a comment and we'll see what we can do. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.